is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 8, Episode 6, The Caretaker. In this episode, the Doctor qualifies for the vaccine because he is a caretaker. Congratulations, Doc. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Jamie.
Yeah, I did not realize, because we were talking about Jamie being a caretaker before we started recording, and I had forgotten that that's the name of this episode. And then when I went and pulled it up, I was like, oh my God, right.
I forgot about that too.
So, Jamie, is this another one of the ones that you didn't watch the first time around?
No, I think I've watched it because there were like flashes in here where I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this. But I didn't remember a lot of it. I think I mostly remembered the Doctor being shitty to Danny.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to forget.
Yeah.
What is his deal?
I was really thinking about this, and it made me think about how the Ninth Doctor was also pretty shitty to Mickey.
Oh, yeah, true. True.
And so then I was like, is it a boyfriend thing? But he wasn't really shitty to Rory. He wasn't great to Rory, but he wasn't entirely dismissive of Rory.
Yeah.
So then I was like, is it a race thing? Because the two boyfriends that I'm thinking of are black.
That's true.
But I don't think it's that. What I think it is that, and it's what Danny actually says, he needs to make sure I'm good enough for you. So I think that he, with Mickey, just thought Mickey was a total idiot and not nearly good enough for Rose.
Poor Mickey.
And with Danny, it's that he was a soldier. And for whatever reason, they've decided this season that the Doctor doesn't like soldiers. And so that puts Danny in a position of not being good enough for Clara, because that probably means that he's violent or stupid. Just like he keeps saying, oh, you're a PE teacher.
Yeah.
Because he thinks soldiers are stupid, except that you were a soldier, sir.
I'm glad that you said that they've decided for some reason this season that's going to be a problem for him, because that was what kept sort of tripping me up. Was I felt like I missed an episode or something where we really got it established what his problem is. And I don't know if it's meant to be that, like, after what happened with the War Doctor.
I do think that that's a factor, but they haven't explained it.
Yeah.
We're just supposed to be like, okay, new Doctor, new personality, and given that he now remembers everything clearly that he did as the War Doctor, but also changed that eventuality. Mm-hmm. Now he hates soldiers, but it doesn't explain why.
Yeah. I had a hard time with this one. I really what it is for me, and I know that this isn't something that, like, is possible because of the way the show has to work, but if I was Mr. Pink and I was, like, seeing this girl and she was apparently really close friends with a dude who spoke to me the way that he speaks to Danny. Mm-hmm. And she really just stood by and watched. I would dump her.
Yeah.
Forthwith. Like, there is just, that's, I think, what bothered me the most is not even that the Doctor's so shitty to her, but how little she stands up for Danny. She yells at the Doctor, but there's no boundary set. It's always her letting him go off and then afterward being like, what's your problem? And it never even feels like she's getting to the heart of the matter in terms of like, you can't speak to him like this. This is really disrespectful to both of us. It's more like what's happening in the episode is that there's like a time crunch. And so the sense of urgency due to this emergency situation is constantly overshadowing the way the doctor's behaving and allowing her to like turn away from that and focus on this other situation instead and sort of put off dealing with the way the doctor's acting, you know?
I would say that she is also intentionally putting it off, having the confrontation or dealing with the actual truth of the matter. Mm-hmm. Because even when she tries to talk to Danny about it, she doesn't apologize to him for lying all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
She's just, this is what happens. He's a time traveler. We travel through space and time.
Hope and you're it's cool amazing. With that.
It's amazing, this thing that I do. And I love it. And I experience wonder.
Yeah.
And anything to say to your boyfriend who you just claimed you love. Mm-hmm. And that's why you want the doctor to stop treating him the way he has been. And yet you're not showing him the respect of, you're right, I have been lying to you. These are the reasons why. And I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. But it won't happen again. Because now you know that this is going on. So now I won't lie anymore. Because I don't have to hide it anymore.
Yeah, that moment where she just got done trying to convince him that this was all a play. And then she's like trying to say that she loves him. And I'm just like, girl, no, you clearly don't. I was so relieved that his response to that was like, how stupid do you think I am? Because I wasn't sure if they were going to try and make it that he like starts to buy that. And I really wasn't interested. And, you know, for me, this is just a particularly sore subject because those of you who are aware of the way that Owen and I got together, I actually talked about this recently on the Mistborn episode I recorded with Miles. A major issue that sort of arose, it was like one of those things that happens in relationships where you have had a constant low lying problem and then something occurs that crystallizes exactly the problem in a way that is impossible to ignore. You've been managing to sort of pretend it's not happening. And then it's just shoved in your face and you can't ignore it anymore. Brendan and I were recording A Song of Ice and Fire. We had been doing so for about a year, maybe a little less. And this guy, whose username at the time on Twitter, he's not on there anymore, was Usurpation Blitz.
I remember that name.
Right? He was a major supporter and just always in the chats, always in the comments. And all of a sudden, we had on as guests the two hosts from Cast of Thrones, the married couple, I think Tim Lanning and I can't remember his wife's name. They were great, but for some reason, Usurpation Blitz did not like the two of them. Still don't know what the deal was there exactly. And he came on Twitter and he began to tag both me and them in tweets about how he really likes our show, but he's not going to listen to these two idiots, and I'll wait till next week. And then started to get a lot more aggressive and began to like call them cunts and just generally being a huge asshole for no apparent reason and tagging me and them so that I couldn't just like let it go and pretend I hadn't seen it or just, you know, I was being targeted with it. And I told him to back the fuck off and that he was, you know, really affecting the reputation of the show by doing this. And he began to launch into me personally. And Brendan, this went on for several hours of usurpation going at me on Twitter and then coming into a forum that we had created. This was before Facebook groups were a thing. And going off in there about how he thought that I was cooler than this and that I wouldn't be so upset by bad language because he didn't understand what I was actually taking issue with. And I was relating every message to Brendan, telling him, this is what this guy just said to me. And Brendan was playing a video game and going, this guy. And then just keep him playing. And I finally said, are you ever going to say something to this guy? I've been handling this all on my own. And he was like, well, I mean, I figured you could handle it. I'm like, I can. That's not the problem. You don't seem to give a fuck. That's the problem. And of course, because he's a guy, he went in and talked to Usurp and immediately usurped back down because the man came in and spoke. And all of a sudden, oh, I get it now. And it really, that for me was like, I suddenly realized he isn't willing to like put forth the effort, the bare minimum effort of defending me. And it's a really easy, it's not him up against his family. It's not like an in-person, it's somebody online. You don't get an easier opening to like be good to your spouse and have their back. And he just didn't. And then, only like a month and a half later, somebody started to come at me again regarding something else. And Owen, out of nowhere, decided to fucking field that. And he went in on this guy for a solid hour and a half. And didn't let up for a moment. And just basically crushed the guy until the man just stopped replying entirely. Tagged me in every reply, but nevertheless. Was this, like, had you noticed him before this? Like, had you been commenting about other things or anything? I had noticed him because he had donated to the show, and he was, like, on Twitter or and I found him funny. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't noticed him. Well, I didn't mean noticed. But this I meant, like, was what he made me notice him. Okay. This was the thing. Because he just, it wasn't even a question. He just felt so defensive so immediately. And he just came in and was like, no, what we're not going to do is be a fucking dick for no reason. And he invested all this time. And I suddenly was like, I'm married to somebody who isn't willing to put forth the 15 minutes to type out a thing while he's playing video games. It's not like he was busy. And here's a total stranger who's like got my back in a way that that's what I was looking for, and I didn't even realize. And that's just a boil down of how the two of them are as partners. Mm-hmm. One of them was just an incredibly passive person who it just felt like bare minimum effort on everything all the time. And then somebody else who was just like willing to go to bat the instant that anybody is starting to come at me. He's just like, oh, what? And it's just, watching this just upset me. Because Clara is not giving him, like, basic respect. You can't allow somebody to talk to your partner like that right in front of you. The doctor's in his face, yelling at him, dismissing him. And she says nothing. Nothing. Just looks at him. A real disapproving look. Ooh. And then walks past him without actually saying anything to him. And later on, it's supposed to be like, oh, well, he just wants to make sure I'm good enough for you. No. That's not an excuse for his behavior. No. Mm-mm. And it's not an excuse for her behavior. I can't get over the fact that she was, like, just willing to stand there and allow that. I'm disgusted. So a couple of things. First of all, Owen's awesome, and every time you tell any of these stories about before you guys were actually together, I'm always more and more impressed with him because he's great. That is correct. 2, I've never gotten into a fight with anybody online where I would need or expect my boyfriend to jump in and defend me because it gives me too much anxiety to engage in that way, so I don't. Mm-hmm.
But similarly, there have been a few instances. One was New Year's Eve where we weren't together. I got very, very drunk. The only time I've ever actually blacked out.
Yikes.
And apparently he was just keeping an eye on me because he could tell I was not, like, completely conscious. And some guy that was at this party that was in our group of friends, like, started leading me away.
Ooh.
And Jason jumped in and, like, threw him up against the wall and told him to keep his fucking hands off me.
Nice.
Which I found out about later, and I was like, oh my God, that guy. Whew.
There is nothing as hot as a guy who is, like, protective in a way that isn't toxic, obviously.
Right. And when I think about it, I'm like, he kept me from being sexually assaulted, which makes him a hero. And then a few years ago, I was still an assistant manager, and I was put at this store where they were actively excluding me from everything. The girls who worked there were very cliquey, and they wouldn't talk to me, and it made me miserable. I would go to work, and they would ignore me, or I would try to talk to them, and they would literally look at me and then turn away and continue talking to each other.
Christ.
And so I would come home just upset every day. He has not gone to that store since then. He refuses. Even though things got better and I ended up really enjoying my time there after I worked everything out with people and, like, figured out what the fucking problem was. And I expressed to him, like, no, I'm, like, friends with a lot of these girls now, and I don't know what that deal was, but it's in the past. It's been dealt with. It's fine. And I actually like all of them. And he's like, I don't fucking care. They treated you like shit for no reason, and I will not go to that store.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's stuff like that where it's like, that's having your back. I don't necessarily need him to fight for me, although that's great too. But having my back is a big deal. And yeah, if he didn't do stuff like that, I would have a problem too. I'd be like, do you care at all?
Yep.
Like, are you supportive in any way? Like, have any kind of emotion whatsoever to show that you care, because it doesn't seem like you do.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing for me. It was just this feeling of, like, it's such passivity. And that was really part of, like, as things began to really deteriorate between us, there was always a feeling to me of, he isn't even really willing to put up a fight. He's not even trying to, like, keep me. It's like, as soon as I expressed some doubt about our relationship, he sort of checked out and was like, well, I guess this is over now. And there was simply no fight in him. And that was what was, like, really bothered me. I was like, you can't be so sad about me. Like, but I love you. Do you? 'Cause then you'd try anything. You would just put forth some effort. And it's a real, like, it's not about whether somebody can handle themselves. It's about your partner knowing that they are on your side or you are on their side. And this happened, like, recently with me and Owen several months ago. There was a whole thing going on with some of his friends. And I went in and texted a friend of his who had really let him down. And he found out afterwards that I had texted them and was upset. And I was like, look, I respect that. If you don't want me talking to them, I won't do that in the future. But I was in contact with them on this subject already, personally. And you have to know that I am absolutely going to call that shit out when somebody treats you this way. 'Cause I'm not interested in pretending that this is fine. And they already know that, you know, I'm already was in talks with them about the situation. So not responding at all would also feel weirdly like it would be the kind of thing that's, like, almost more awkward to just pretend that didn't happen.
Right.
It was just, you know, I want that from him, and I am going to do that for him as well. And it sometimes, I think, makes him uncomfortable because he isn't used to anybody advocating for him, and it makes him feel a little weird. But I'm going to do it anyway.
Right, because that's what being a team is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, as I've told you before, didn't like Clara.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I theorized, especially in the previous season, that it was because they didn't establish her character at all.
Right.
But a lot of people also didn't like Danny. And I'm really curious, and I would love for the audience to, like, post something in the Whovian group, or maybe I will once this episode posts, if anyone knows why. Because so far, I don't get it. And I remember that being something that was floating around in sort of the Doctor Who fandom. They didn't like Clara, but they didn't like Danny either. And I don't get it.
I'll tell you how I feel about this.
Okay.
Because I don't love Danny. And what I think it is they haven't... This episode is probably the most that I have liked him, simply because he stood up for himself against the Doctor, mm-hmm. and it gave him something actively to do. But he has been in a sort of unique position this past season, because he is sort of playing the role that women often play, where he is the love interest, and there's like a mystery surrounding him, and there's not actually a lot for him to do. And he's just sort of been here and there. So I think that every time we've seen him, he's just been like extremely goofy and mm-hmm. just felt a little like awkward and not interesting in a way that makes it understandable to us why Clara is so into him, other than the fact that he's cute. You know what I mean?
I get that. That feels more like, well, I mean, he's not horrible or anything, but there's just not a lot of there. Which is true. You're right. We haven't learned anything about him, or not much about him. He doesn't seem, up before this episode especially, didn't seem to have too much of a personality beyond sort of these two not being able to communicate well together. Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, my mom tested positive again.
She still got it. I'm sorry, lady.
It's fine. She feels fine. Sorry, the text message just popped up on my screen. That's annoying. Anyway, I just don't think that there was a reason to actively dislike him. And it seems to me, and maybe I'm just remembering it wrong because I wasn't really interacting with the fandom too much at that point, but it seemed to me that what I was hearing the most out of people was they didn't like Clara, they didn't like Danny. And at the time I wasn't really watching, and then I binged most of it, and also even then just never really had much of an opinion on him. Nothing that stuck anyway. It didn't, certainly, like, Mickey made more of an impression on me, and definitely Rory.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't see anything to be like, oh, he sucks.
Right. Yeah, I can't help but wonder if it's just like, well, we don't like him. And so the fact that we don't like him turns into, I'm bored of you. Why are you on the screen? Oh my God, I hate this guy. Get him out of here. Where it's not actually like genuine hatred, but there's an impatience that sort of fuels it. Because I've definitely had that with characters personally, as we all know, where I'm just like, I am so over this. Can we just not anymore? I don't know, but, you know, obviously that's just a theory.
I wonder if there's a little bit of sort of the way I felt after the 10th Doctor switching into the 11th Doctor, where I liked him so much, and I liked Rose so much, and I never really gave the other companions too much of a fair shake because they weren't Rose. And now here's this 11th Doctor, and I like this actor, and he's really fun to watch, but I don't really like these other people very much. And then I really liked Rory, but that has a lot to do with Rory's perfect and adorable. But I didn't really like Amy. And I didn't really care that much about the Doctor until we rewatched. And I wonder if a lot of people's reactions to Clara especially in this season where they actually are establishing her personality better.
Right, yeah.
If it's that, well, now we have another couple here, but they're not Amy and Rory.
Yeah, I could see that.
And people really, really loved Amy and Rory. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if some of that factored in too. So I'd really love it if audience members, like, let me know.
Yeah.
Like, how did you feel about these two? What did you like or not like? Were you in the camp of, like, I really don't like Danny Pink? And if so, please tell me why. Because he's not, like, the most interesting person they've ever had on the show. Mm-hmm. But he's not the worst person they've ever had on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. They're just being, like, sort of a holdover from feeling a way about a previous couple. That's what's so hard about this show is, and, you know, I've mentioned before that I don't really get to, like, really grow attached to characters because they aren't around that long. Even a season or two isn't really long enough for me. And I could see that being an issue with people who do get attached in that time, and this coming up, like, frequently, you know? I feel bad too, because, like I said, I can kind of understand the feelings that people have if they were frustrated with him, just because I don't find him that interesting. At first, I thought he was very charming. And part of that was just the way things were presented between the two of them, with this whole, like, each of them feeling incredibly embarrassed at the way that they handled a situation, and us getting to see them both sort of cringing at themselves separately, which was, I wish that we were still getting a little bit more of that, to be honest, because I feel like that gave some insight. But yeah, I feel like I want to like him more than I do, and I'm just really standing up for him this episode because of the way the doctor's treating him, not really because I care about him that much. It's just me, you know, just trying to be like, well, let's just do the right thing and not be a dick.
Yeah, the way the doctor treats him in this episode really makes me sit back and be like, okay, so there's a reason why I wasn't really able to connect to this doctor before. And it's some of this. This behavior just doesn't feel like the doctor to me.
I mean, I would have agreed with you until you pointed out that, you know, number 9 and Mickey, and now I'm like, I guess it is a little, though.
A little, but there wasn't a harshness to it. It was more in a sort of jovial way where he would call him Mickey the idiot, and he would call him Ricky, like he was teasing him.
I see.
Like, he was sort of playful about it, even though, like, he obviously thought he was an idiot.
Right.
He didn't want to trust him with anything until Mickey earned his trust, which didn't happen until after he'd switched over to 10. But he didn't treat him with this derision of, like, oh no, your PE teacher, as if that doesn't require any skill. That's just so base level, like any person off the street can be the PE teacher. You're a dumb soldier, you don't have a brain in your head, there's no way you teach math. Like, that's actively insulting to somebody. Yeah,
that's true.
And I don't understand. Like, then he, like, thinks that she's into this other guy who he thinks reminds him of himself because he wears a bow tie. Like,
no, he looks like Matt Smith.
Oh, I didn't think so.
Are you high? Girl?
I didn't think he looked like Matt Smith.
What? I thought it was Matt Smith for a split second. Oh my God. What? I can't wrap my head around that. I'm trying to find the spot with him because I want to, like, get a, clip of the moment.
But still, like, he would be okay with her dating somebody that reminds him of himself when he was this, like, goofy version of the doctor. And that's okay, but this guy's not because of why? Because he was a soldier, and I don't get that, and you're just being outright rude and on purpose rude, not even the sort of way that he's rude sometimes where he's just obtuse. Mm-hmm. This is like going out of your way to be mean.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And my memory of this doctor was that he was mean. And I think it stems from this episode. Because he's brash and he's kind of leaned into the asshole side of his personality in this version. Mm-hmm. But I didn't find him mean until this episode.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a fair distinction. And look, and this is like... I want to say that I understand the reason for this, but the truth is I don't. So I would be lying. But I know for some reason, I'm sending you the screenshot of this guy who I cannot believe that you don't see that he looks like Matt Smith. Like it's not like he's a doppelganger, but oh my God. Like, come on. They even styled his hair. He's got the ears and a very big forehead. He's not looking like a foot, but he's foot-ish. Foot adjacent.
I don't see it other than they're both white British guys. Like, he doesn't look like Matt Smith at all to me.
Well, clearly the show disagrees with you on that one.
I guess so.
But the thing that they want to do on this show every time is have some sort of issue with the doctor and his companion having a relationship. And it doesn't necessarily they are clearly playing it that he doesn't find Claire attractive Clara. He doesn't find her attractive. Like, they've made it very clear that he doesn't see her that way, but they needed to come at it from another angle anyway. You know what I mean? And it feels like every season they want to create some sort of conflict with this.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, is she in love with him? Is he secretly in love with her? There was the whole, when it was still Matt Smith, it felt like they were starting to go into, she does fancy him, he does fancy her. It was flat out said. Yeah. And it just, they can't help themselves with that. And I just don't feel like it should be necessary if you are making the story interesting in other ways. It feels like a crutch.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree. I don't know why it can't be this person is important to me because they give me some kind of balance, or they call me out when I'm being an ass like Donna did. Mm-hmm. Why it has to be that, well, you need to lie to everybody around you, which always has some sort of repercussions later with their family or their loved one or whatever. Mm. And why there has to be this kind of conflict, because it's unnecessary. It doesn't add to the enjoyment to have, what do you think is going to happen next? Is Danny just going to be like, well, okay, I guess you're running off with the doctor, or does he start joining them like we've had happen over and over again? Mm-hmm. Are we just retreading stuff that's already happened? Or can we have, I don't know, if you're going to go this route, why even give her a boyfriend? Just find another thing to be your through line, mm-hmm. instead of her secretly running off with you and getting trapped places and then showing up late for dates and treating this person like shit. Mm-hmm. And how am I supposed to root for you if you're lying to this guy and then not apologizing for it when you get caught?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Yep.
And if people disliked Clara because of that, I would have understood it. But I still don't really understand all the reasons that people didn't like her.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it was based in good, solid reasons. I mean...
No.
Yeah. This is the reason that I put so much resistance up to romance in stuff that I cover. Because this is often what happens, is it's just mined for drama. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't actually feel like there's particular connection between the two people. It doesn't feel like it's earned. They'll just be a man and a woman who happen to be in proximity, and inevitably we know they're going to wind up together, even though there doesn't actually seem to be any reason for that to happen. And then you have just the misunderstandings, the back and forth, keeping secrets, and it's tiresome. And like you said, if she handled this better, I wouldn't even be as mad about it. But she chooses to just not apologize or really, like, I did appreciate the in-depth explanation. That was something that I wasn't even sure I was going to get, you know? Mm-hmm. So in that respect, I was pleasantly surprised because I kind of wondered if she was just going to be like, look, it's complicated, okay? And we were just going to leave it at that. So thankfully, it wasn't that. But it also doesn't feel like they actually addressed the real problem between the two of them, which is that she has not only been lying, but she was willing to lie right up until like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And what the fuck? Like, you're literally standing right there. It is very insulting. Yeah, you know.
And I think they think, like, they being Stephen Moffat and whoever writes the show, they think that they're doing something different because the actor playing the Doctor is older now. Mm-hmm. So we're not playing the romance angle between the Doctor and the companion.
Right.
So this is different this time.
That's what I mean. It's like they realized they couldn't do that, but they had to do something like it. So they're choosing this other weak thing, you know?
Yeah, like it... I don't know. I think we've said it all.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to go around in another circle. Mm-hmm. But it's frustrating. It makes this show, this episode, not particularly enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And really just makes me root for Danny Pink and want him to dump her and go live your life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I completely agree. I just want to be more on her side than I wound up being. It just feels really like...
There's no way to be on her side with the way they wrote this.
Yeah.
And I think that they think we're supposed to be. Like, in their writing, we're supposed to be on her side somehow, but I don't see how you can be that way.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. That's always the thing that I find that the saddest is when I can tell writers expected me to be feeling a certain way, and that absolutely hasn't happened. You know, it's just, guys, why did you think that's what you were going to get out of me with this? But, yeah. So, okay. I mean, we haven't really talked about what actually happens here. Honestly, so what's the name of the creature this episode? The alien?
Hold on, it is...
Pop quiz. Whatever it is, it's a robot-y?
It's a Skovox Blitzer. We threw some letters into a scrambler, and this is what came out.
Good God. I'm sorry. That was just so funny.
We're just going to call him Wolf Blitzer and be done with
Wolf Blitzer. So this thing is like refresh me on what it is that the doctor is afraid of happening. Because he's here to help try and transport it off of Earth. And he was using these, like, portal creating thingies to do that. Which, you know, Danny winds up fucking up. But I can't remember what it is that he's worried about happening if the thing isn't moved. Because it's killed one person by the time that the doctor, like, has a scene with it. It's killed a police officer. But honestly, that police officer was harassing a couple of black students, so it's fine. And there really isn't a feel of discretion to that officer's death. It's very much like, oh, this guy was near me. I didn't like it, so I killed him.
It says, Skovok's Blitzer, a machine that will kill without any concern as to whether its victims actually pose a threat. It was attracted by residual Artron energy in the area. Knowing it will eventually destroy Earth, he aims to send it away. If the military gets involved, they will just mess things up.
Okay. I guess that's fine. Is it? It doesn't matter. The monster is very secondary. So the whole thing this episode is that the doctor, in order to deal with this thing, is going to pose as the caretaker at the school, undercover. And by undercover, he means I have a jacket that I'll wear. Honestly, I did find that really funny. It's like the bare minimum of attempt to be undercover.
He's wearing a different coat.
Yep, that's it. That's all it takes. And I was like, you know what? Who's going to recognize you? It's fine. That seems like a fair way to deal with it. And he, like I said, was setting up all of these little, like, sort of sensors. I don't know what the word is for these, but he's placing them all around in exact locations so that they will create the portal that he needs. And Danny moving one means that when it finally goes off, this monster is transported only like a day away instead of a billion years away. Something like that.
Yeah, it's not transported as far away.
Right. And
so it'll be able to bring itself back, drawn by this energy or these particles or whatever.
Right. And that's really, like, the whole thing with the doctor hating him, it starts off immediately with him just being like, you're a math teacher? I'm sorry, I can't make that work in my head, which I was just like, oh my God, what is your problem? But then when Danny moves this thing, that really is like part of what sets the doctor off entirely, is him like ruining the plan. And look, as somebody who takes plans very seriously personally, I understand that kind of frustration, but dude.
Look, this all could have been solved by Clara being honest with her boyfriend when the doctor showed up. Like, hey, I've got to explain something to you.
Yeah.
It's going to sound crazy. But this is my friend. He calls himself the Doctor. He's a Time Lord. He has this blue box. Let me show you. It's bigger on the inside. It's a spaceship. It travels in time and space. And there's an alien here, and he's trying to catch it. Problem fucking solved, and Danny's not going to be suspicious and going around finding these little blinking things that are not hidden well and being like, what the fuck are these?
That was part of my problem. Yeah, that was part of my problem, is the doctor like just leaving these things around. And in the culture that we currently live in, you can't do that. You can't just leave blinking electronic devices scattered around school grounds and think that people aren't going to have an issue with that, dude. Like, come on.
And even if you can't expect people, but like, this guy's a soldier and he's going to see a little, what looks like an electronic device that has a flashing light on it. He's probably going to think it's an explosive. Mm-hmm. And they're not hidden.
No.
The first one he picked up was, like, stuck to a fire thing. The fire alarm. Right?
I don't remember which one it wasn't hidden. I know that. Yeah.
It was, like, right out in the open, just sticking underneath a box, basically, that you can see it from flashing from a distance. Like, oh, what's this? Then I'm going to start looking around and know the caretakers from going in and out of this room. Oh, what's that flashing light in a plant? Like, come on. So you can't get mad at him that he disrupted your plans. Because you could have filled him in. Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Yeah, it just really, the whole thing doesn't... It's just... And even if it did work, I'm just too distracted by everything else that goes on this episode between the two of them. I don't know what to make of the doctor. Like, well, first of all, there's this amazing moment. The alien winds up being, like, forcibly shut down, and is going to self-destruct because of something the doctor did. He's got a control panel, and he's, like, using this thing that translates his voice to make it sound like he's a superior officer.
Yeah.
And so he does something that's, like, making it worse, actually. And then all of a sudden in comes Mr. Pink, and he does this, like, somersault.
The gymnastics flip over a robot.
What was that?
It's like his Captain America hero moment.
What? That felt like it was from an entirely different show.
That was from like Mission Impossible or something.
Or alternatively, the Olympics. Because there's just no real look. It's fine. He needed to do something incredibly impressive, I guess. And I didn't realize that part of the training for British soldiers was fucking gymnastics, but here we are.
Yeah.
Also, I guess it would make more sense that he's a PE teacher after seeing that, but that's a whole other thing.
I've had PE teachers, and not one of them could even do a somersault on the ground.
That's fair.
This was some superhero crap. Well, and you know how I love the superheroes, but let's be realistic. Even if the Doctor did this, I'd be like, nah, I don't think so.
If the Doctor did it, I'd especially be like, no, I don't think so.
It's just some weird action star stuff that, like, you don't see anything like that in this show normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm worried that this is, like, going to be a thing that they try and do with Danny, where they're going to have him, like, low-key be a superhero here and there because they need to make him badass enough that he's, like, worthy of Clara or something. I don't know.
These notes say, just then Danny yells out to the Blitzer. He runs and jumps over it as it fires its lasers at him. It does not... I'm sorry. Runs and jumps over it sounds like he was doing, like, the hurdles.
Yeah.
This was fully on wires. Full rotation in the air. Simone Biles shit.
Yes, indeed. Look, I can't think of a time where a somersault is the more efficient thing to do. Maybe you could argue that the form that your body takes makes for a smaller target because you're curled up.
No, you know, running and sliding under the lasers makes more sense.
Yeah. It was a moment of me just being like, what are they doing?
Same. Yeah. And again, when I watched it yesterday, I was like, oh yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Why? I knew we were going to have to talk about it. As soon as it happened, I was just like, yeah. That's going to be a discussion, because that was just...
And it's extra silly because what it sort of feels like happens here is that as soon as he does this, there's a vibe of like, well, now the doctor thinks maybe I'm good enough because I did a somersault midair. And like, I know really it's meant to be he saved the day, but that's not how it feels. It feels like, well, I didn't know that you could do a somersault in midair. If you had told me that you could do a somersault in midair from the beginning, maybe I wouldn't have had the attitude that I have this whole time. It just feels like there's a different thing going on to me.
Yeah.
Well, I know you can't tell me, but are we going to have him be a companion tag along? I want to know.
Shrug.
Yeah.
Historically, you would think, because it's happened every time. So what would be interesting is if he doesn't. But
would it?
Right. But and also, are they willing to go that route, or are they going to want to mine this for more drama of like getting the doctor won over to Danny's side? Are they going to want to rock the boat in any way? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is why I feel like it would be really interesting if for once the doctor, as a man, had a male companion, which I know has happened in the past. I know it's happened in old Doctor Who, but we're very rarely even talking about that because neither of us have seen it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What if the doctor regenerates, he gets a new companion, and that new companion is another guy? So that we can see, like, what happens when the doctor's not being paternalistic or having a love interest. And then what if that companion gets a girlfriend? How does that change how the doctor behaves to this new person who you didn't necessarily invite on your adventures, but now is tagging along?
Right.
There are so many more interesting things they could have done, but they keep mining the same old well. And yeah, like, I've been giving this season a fair shot. I've rewatched. There's stuff I liked. There's stuff that I'm like, whatever.
Right.
This is one of the ones where I'm like, I can't defend it. I can't find anything within it to defend. The doctor did not amuse me or win me over in any way in this episode. Clara didn't do anything that won me over. She actually made me dislike her. And Danny is just sort of, he's fine. But I'm not entirely I'm on his side in this episode, but I'm not like, Danny Pink for companion, get rid of Clara.
Right.
You know, and like, back when I didn't like Amy, but I loved Rory, I was like, why isn't Rory the companion? Who cares about Amy?
Honestly,
guys, as you know, I changed my mind about all of that. I like Amy and I love Rory and I love them together and whatever, but I always liked Rory. He always was interesting to me. And I just don't, this episode just really solidifies why I was continually disengaged.
Yeah. I won't say that this, because like I've had episodes of this show that just made me go, what are we doing?
Yeah. To
a point that, like you guys know, I have considered quitting because I just got so irritated. And I don't feel that way about this. It's early enough, I think, in the season, and it's a different doctor, so it's still interesting to me to see where this might go or what they might do. Mm-hmm. But because previously, when I started to get really irritated was like after almost a whole season had gone by and I felt like, oh, what I thought is exactly what is happening. That's a shame. That was when I would really start to, and that's not the case here. But it's tough when what I was excited about, which was the fact that Clara wasn't going to be a thing anymore, it turns out first that's not true. And I wanted to give her a chance, acknowledging the fact that, like, They heard feedback that she didn't have enough of an actual personality, and they were trying to do something about that, which I find admirable. And also incredibly shallow, but she's very pretty, and I like looking at her. And I'll give this another shot. It's just... And I also said when the season started, the fact that he is so much older than her, and that they've made it clear there isn't an attraction there, I was like, well, I guess they can't fall back on that thing they do all the time. So I still am kind of interested to see what happens, because as much as I am unimpressed with the way they both handled everything this episode, there's still time, there's still potential for something to, be made from this. Mm-hmm. But it does feel a little disappointing to realize that, like, I kind of, because of the fact that it didn't look like there was going to be anything between the two of them, I let go of the relationship dynamic entirely mentally, and then wound up being sort of yanked back by it after all. They found a way, despite the fact that there doesn't seem to be anything between them, to still make a romantic thing an issue somehow. And that's really, for me, the most tiresome thing. I don't understand how in a show where there's time travel and aliens, this is always what they decide they're going to focus on. Because you've got so many things that you could choose to make the dynamic between the two of them beyond it being a romantic complication. It's the whole world is the universe is at your fingertips. And it's like they tried that last season by having her have this connection to the Doctor and the impossible girl thing, but they still couldn't help it. And they still wound up going into the romantic pool anyway.
The only time that they haven't is with Donna, but even then, they had other people be like, oh, you're a couple? And then being like, nope, ew, no, gross.
Yeah.
Like, it still got brought up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the people who work on this show can't fathom that there would be a relationship between two people of opposite genders, that romance in some way doesn't have to be a factor. Mm-hmm. And, like, in this regard, where it's being made clear that the Doctor values her and considers her his best friend, or whatever. Like, that's how it's written in these notes, that she's his best friend. And I'm like, is she? Okay. Fine. In this version of him, she's his best friend. That he can't just be like, oh, you have a boyfriend? Mm-hmm. Instead of being like, oh, you were going on a date? Well, come and rob a bank with me. And how's that for a date?
Yeah.
Like, why does the Doctor need to be in constant competition with anybody else in the companion's life?
Yeah.
That's what I'm irritated by. Why can't he just be like, oh, you have a boyfriend? Well, we probably should discuss how you're going to explain to him what you do with me.
Right.
Like, let's be mature adults about this. You're 1,200 years old.
And he has had so many companions.
Yeah.
That really what you would think somebody in his position would do is create a Christian Grey style contract that he would be like, all right, so I've run into every conceivable situation with my companions in the past, and here are the things, all of the eventualities that we could come across, and all of the things that I agree to handle and or not handle, and what you agree to take on as my companion. And I feel like all of this has been, really clearly set out. You can either choose to not notify family, in which case I will agree to these hours between 9 and 4 where you are not available to me to suddenly drop in and take you off to a heist. Or you will choose to introduce me, in which case we'll set up a nice dinner and I'll show up not naked to meet your family. I think that would be... that would add a really interesting element to this all, actually, is him beginning to realize that he keeps having this problem and deciding that he's going to start handling it differently. I would find that kind of amusing, actually.
Yeah.
I just want something different. That's really
Agreed.
what it comes down to. I just want it to not feel like this is, like you said, with Donna, she's the one. And I can't help but think that's a major part of why I liked her so much. She was a great companion just as a character because she was super fun. But I think that the romantic angle being firmly set off to the side and them being like, oh, we're definitely not going to do that. I really think that was also a pretty big factor for me, actually. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. There's so much that happens this episode that we haven't really talked about. But honestly, I said, it's so secondary to what's going on with them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's
it's
little
pure
things,
backdrop.
Like, the one thing we haven't really, remotely touched on is that this one student actually sees the TARDIS, talks to him, he shows her that it's a spaceship, and then at the end of the episode he actually takes her and shows her something in the galaxy. Mm-hmm. Which was unexpected. What does it mean? How do you just take a kid into a spaceship and then bring her back home, hopefully to the right time so her parents don't think she was kidnapped? Does that mean anything? Is it going to come up again? That's what I thought about was, so what does this mean? Because it's not like Clara's little kids that she was a nanny for, because that was at one time and then we never saw them again. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't know if this is going to lead to anything or not, but I thought it was interesting that Clara wasn't even there.
Yeah, I found that really confusing, actually. I enjoy whenever somebody gets included in things, as a bit of a surprise, But I do feel a little bit of whiplash sometimes on what the Doctor will allow and is cool with and what he won't. Because there are times where it feels like he wants to keep it on the DL, like who he is and what he can do. And then he'll do something like this where it's just all out there. And it'll catch me by surprise. And does he inform this girl that Clara is in on it? Does she think that this guy is an unknown quantity to everyone?
Yeah, I don't know. We got no explanation. This is one of Clara's students for sure.
Yeah.
She's the prime, what does she call herself? Disruptive influence.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
But she's the one who's going around laughing about Clara and Danny, mm-hmm. writing things on windows about them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
what is it that she says? She says something about the groupie? What is it that she writes on the glass?
It's Aussie.
I'm trying to find the spot here where he wipes it off the glass. The one moment of him doing some of his job because he's covering for all the other shit that he's doing. I can't find it though, because she mutters it to Clara when she walks by, and
I forget what she calls him, because I think she calls Clara
Ozzy loves the squatty.
The squatty, right?
The squatty.
So
here it is. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what those words were referencing.
Oswald.
And then I remembered that Ozzy is for Oswald.
Right.
And squatty, I think, is for soldier.
Right. Yeah, it took me a minute to put that together, because when I first saw it written, I didn't realize it was meant to be about them. And
yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah, so later she mutters it when she walks past Clara, and that was the first time I was like, oh, she means Clara. Oh, I had no idea, because why would I?
I know this is a TV trope thing. I never, not once in the entire time I was in school, paid any attention to my teachers outside of the classroom. They could have been fucking in the hallways and I probably wouldn't have noticed. So to think that this kid is so preoccupied with these two pretending that they're not dating is just weird to me.
It's sort of interesting because that was my relationship with teachers in high school, in like my first school. But when I went to my senior year at Idlewild, we were like hyper aware of the teachers and their relationships at that school.
Well, maybe that's a good correlation to this because this is a private school. It's not a public school.
Maybe that is it. Because also some of the teachers like lived on campus also. So we were around them a little bit more than the average student is, but not even as much as you would think considering. Yeah, it was a weird dynamic sometimes though.
I went to private school when I was little, like from kindergarten until second grade. Well, almost second grade. Because they tried to skip me out of first into third. And it was more advanced than I was. Mostly the math part. I got everything else I was fine with, but the math I couldn't catch on. So my mom ended up putting me in private or in public school. Also, she probably couldn't afford the private school anymore. But I was so young, and it was sort of a weird progressive school where we called our teachers by their first names, and it was just a completely different kind of environment that going to public school was a shock to me because I remember my first teacher said her name. I was like, yeah, but what is your name? And she's like, I'm Miss whatever. And I was like, no, not your last name. What is your name? What's your first name? And she's like, that you don't need to know that. And I was like, then what am I supposed to call you? Because I didn't understand. I'd never had a teacher that I couldn't call by their name.
That's hilarious.
But I was so little at that other school that like those teachers too could have been married to each other, and I didn't know it because also I didn't call them by their last names.
That's so funny though. I'm just imagining this teacher being like, bitch, mind your own business. Like you just getting really fucking in her face about it.
Yeah, this little like 6.5-year-old. I was just like, what is your name though?
What? Why won't you tell me?
I couldn't
I'm not
understand
a witch.
It.
God, I really feel like that's it. Is there anything else in this that you wanted to talk about?
No, there's some like trivia things.
All right, hit me with that.
So the 7th Doctor was previously asked if he was applying for the position of Coal Hill School's caretaker in 1963. And that's the school that she teaches at.
Okay, that's a long... Wow, okay.
The Doctor also pretended to be a caretaker. The 11th Doctor did to make Madge, Arwell, and her children in the Christmas special trust him where he could, be in their house. And he had the children call him the caretaker. And there have been a lot of Artron emissions in the vicinity of Coal Hill over the years. And then it names 3 different episodes, one from the 1st Doctor, one from the 6th Doctor, and one from the 7th Doctor. So that's some nice, consistency.
Yeah, definitely.
There was also, the Doctor says many times that a soldier can't be a math teacher, but the Brigadier became a math teacher after retiring from the military, much to the 5th Doctor's surprise.
Huh.
And that was, remember Kate Lethbridge, whatever, that her dad. And that was it. That was it.
Okay.
I thought there was one more, but it was something that we already talked about, where they also pointed out that the Doctor was derogatory towards Danny and had also been derogatory towards Mickey.
Right, okay.
But I had also thought about that, which is why I put this in here to remind myself, don't forget to talk about this.
Mm-hmm. We only have 2 new patrons since last week, but what is the word for last but not least, I guess, is really the way it goes. I want to say few but not small. You know,
Small,
do you know what I'm trying to say?
Small but mighty.
Okay, yeah. Tindalos Traveler and Mary Seeley Stockler became patrons.
Wow.
So thank you very much to both of you. I hope that you are enjoying our coverage of the Mistborn series, if you're listening to that. I've been having a lot of fun with that with Miles. Apologies to anyone who does listen to that and heard the same exact story on this show. My apologies, but I also am not sorry. And I feel like there was, I know. Rashawn and I, for those of you who like to sort of decide whether or not you want to be a high roller based on what Rashawn and I are going to cover for Unsober, on the 20th, Saturday, at 6 p.m. Central Time of March, we will be covering Galaxy Quest, which, as you all know, is something that Jamie has brought up a couple times that I hadn't seen. And it came up with Rashawn as well, that I hadn't seen it. And we just decided that we would cover that. So Rashawn doesn't remember if she has watched that movie or not. She's like pretty sure she hasn't, but not positive. And because it's like one of those things that the actors in it, I guess, are well known enough that when I started talking to her about who was in it, she immediately knew, but she couldn't tell if that was an indication that she had seen it or if it was just osmosis that happens with pop culture stuff, which can happen.
Everyone in that movie is famous.
Yeah. I have to watch it when Owen's around also.
Yes.
Because it's got his girl in it. And she looks like she is like hot as hell in this movie.
She's smoking in it. She
looks
so good.
So unfair. How this bitch.
Part of it is a blonde wig. Part of it is that her boobs are pushed up to the sky.
Her boobs are anti-gravity devices in the fucking poster.
Yeah. She looks so good in it. And she's so funny. That movie's it's such a funny movie. I'm so excited that you're finally watching it because I love it so much.
So yeah, that's what's going to be coming down the docket for those of you who were wondering about it. And
I do have something semi-related, though, to Galaxy Quest.
Okay.
On a previous episode, a few weeks ago, you said that you had not seen Spaceballs. And somebody commented in the Whovian group that they had recently listened to an old episode where you talked about Spaceballs. And I was like, I wonder if she was mixing that up in her head with Galaxy Quest at the time.
I mean, I've seen clips from Spaceballs. I haven't watched the movie. Oh. Maybe that's what it is that I was like, I knew what happened in a scene or something because I had watched a clip.
Spaceballs is also a movie that I would recommend watching, but I need to rewatch it and see if there's any, like, racially offensive things in it because it was made so long ago and it's a Mel Brooks movie and it's highly possible. Mm-hmm. But, man, that's like a perfect send-up of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's Mel Brooks. I when he's good, he's so good. Mm-hmm. I really like History of the World was one of my favorite movies for such a long time. Such a shamefully long time. And
I haven't seen that one.
Oh my God. Jamie. What is her name? Madeline Kahn?
Yes. Oh God, Queen.
I swear to God that her role in that movie established who I am as a person now. I don't know what it was, but it was like her performance in that was what made me go, oh, I want to be funny. I want to be like that. And there's this moment where she's being carried in a litter by all of these hulking male slaves. And she screams out, would you please step on the same foot at the same time? My tits are falling off. And I will never forget how, for some reason, that got me. But I was only like 11. And I repeated that in an exact impression of her voice at full volume to my mother. And she fell out. And it was one of those things where I could tell that she was like, she knew she shouldn't be laughing, but she couldn't help it. And that was it, where I was like, I just saw the reaction that somebody had to this really great joke with a particularly excellent delivery that I had no, it was not me that did it, but I was like, oh, the power of this. I want it. And so, that's where it all started for me.
Madeline Kahn's a good place to start.
It's so good.
That's how I feel about Carol Burnett.
Oh, yes.
And John Ritter. When I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and be like Carol Burnett and John Ritter. And I am not like either one of them. So somewhere along the lines, my insecurities got to me and I am not able to let go and be absolutely out of control goofy, which they both are. Or he was.
Yeah, that's a real must for comedy, I guess, is to really like be okay with letting yourself look like an idiot.
Yeah, it's key.
Yeah.
Which I think is why my sense of humor ended up like my own personal when I'm funny. It's way drier. Mm-hmm. Because I have never, still to this day, mastered the ability to let go completely and just be goofy.
Yeah.
And I need to figure that out. That's next on my list.
I mean, you don't have to. Like,
I feel
you can have
like
a different type of humor.
It would be very freeing for me to let go of that, whatever's holding me back.
Gotcha. That's fair.
And just be able to be goofy and not feel like somebody's going to judge me and tell me I look stupid.
Right.
Because when I watch people like Carol Burnett, I'm just like, she doesn't care how ridiculous this looks because she knows it's so funny.
Yeah. Yep. That was when I was in school for musical theater. Those were the scenes where I like really excelled. Were the ones where you got to just completely like go all out.
Okay, so that group of little memes that you shared today or yesterday of the cats as star signs, sun signs. And you were like, I don't get the one for Libra.
I don't.
You've just explained it.
The cat's just hanging upside down.
The cat is being ridiculous and not caring.
Is that a Libra trait?
I don't know. I'm not a Libra, but
that's what I mean when I say really I don't get it. Because it doesn't feel like a particularly Libra. Like the Libra thing is that, we are... we want everybody to like us. We want to keep the peace. We are very obsessed with aesthetic, borderline vain. All of that is true. And I don't get how this cat is
there an aspect of Libras where you want to make everyone laugh? Or is that just a you thing?
No, that's not really like a defining feature. That's just me.
Because the way I interpreted it was, this is really funny. And that's what you do is make people laugh.
Yeah, so
in that respect, I was like, I don't know, it makes sense to me as it applies to you, but I don't know that much about Libras.
Yeah, I don't know. That would like, I think maybe Krista or maybe Bridget left a comment and was like, well, the cat's balancing between like two curtains and Libra's thing is the scales. And I was like, maybe that is all it is. It's just like, oh, well, he's balancing, I didn't
realize it was two curtains. I was just like, why is that cat hanging upside down from the curtains?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, one of my favorite ones that I did for that class was we had to imitate objects and get people to understand. Or no, somebody would name an object and we had to run out onto the stage and be that object. And somebody said popcorn. And I was like, I ran out and huddled up into a little ball and then just yelled pop and splayed all my arms and legs out really suddenly and jumped and then just landed back in a tiny ball. And it was like one of the few moments in my life where it hurt really bad to do that. And I didn't care because I knew I was nailing it. I nailed it. And I had such bruises on like my shins and the tops of my feet after that little bit. But it was like worth it because everybody was cracking up because I just really went for it.
That makes me think of Whose Line Is It Anyway, which you probably would be pretty good at.
That's one of those things that I'm like, I fancy that I'd be good at it, and I bet I wouldn't. I bet I think a lot of things. And then I would go out there and just freeze up, and it would be awful to witness. But I don't know. Maybe I'd be okay. I also, like, Brendan was very into doing improv when I was with him in Philly. And I saw how bad it can go. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I just have, like, more anxiety around that than I might otherwise, because I saw some bad nights where things just didn't go their way.
Yeah, I won't go to any improv shows if it's not an established improv group.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it can be very, very painful.
It was awful a couple times. Like, for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised. I went to enough performances that the good outweighed the bad, but the bad was so bad. And he was always crushed afterward because, you know, he knows that it didn't go well. Yeah. So I think that was the hardest part, was just being, like, with one of the people who knows that they just crashed and burned for hours after the performance, and them just, like, looking sadly into the mirror.
Was he any good?
He was very good. Yeah, he was. And I don't know if he's, like, doing that still. I think he might be, because he was pretty into it.
You know who used to do improv?
Who?
Krista.
Oh, of course she did. Krista, are you listening? Of course you did.
She also tried stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I knew that one. And improv and stand-up comedy have to go together, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, stand-up is one of those things that, like, I just can't imagine that kind of vulnerability. You're literally just standing there in front of everybody with a microphone in your hand. There's not even a lectern to block your body from them. You're just out there. Mm-hmm. And you're just telling a story, and they're all right there. And it's just, you know, one would think that with what I do, it would feel just sort of similar to that. But no, it's not. It's not.
No, because even when you're doing your, like, crowdcasts, like Spoil Me's, where there are people in the chat, it's the chat. It's not right in front of you where you're expecting laughs and getting none. Mm-hmm.
God, I can't imagine what it would be like to, like, deliver a joke that you really think is good and not get a reaction. Can you imagine? I would die.
I would die. I would be like, okay, thank you. Like, that's it. Okay, that didn't work. I'm not doing it again. You have to have a certain, like, disposition, I think, to really be able to handle that and push through it. And I don't have that. Yeah. Whatever that thing is, to be like, this is what I really want to do. And I haven't gotten there yet, but I'll get there. I'll keep working at it. Like, good for you. I don't have that. That kind of rejection, I would be like, yeah, no, I'm out.
Yeah. It's too immediate. Mm-hmm. You know, it's
and
bad enough to get a review that's like, she's not funny. First of all, fuck you. Yes, I am. But second of all, ouch. And for it to just be I mean, even just delivering a joke to your friends and they don't laugh is devastating. Mm-hmm. It's just... Absolutely not. No.
That's why I always, like, some of my proudest moments are when I've made people laugh. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not often trying to. Like, I know what I'm saying is funny, but I'm not actively trying to get laughs. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I think I'm funnier than I am. And when people laugh at me, I'm like, oh, that feels great.
Yep.
And when I make people laugh that are traditionally hard to make laugh, that's even better. When I make my boyfriend laugh, it's the best.
Yeah, I think I remember Brendan saying that once, that he was like, oh, he always knew that a joke was really good when I laughed, because it's a little hard to make me laugh. I find things funny, but I don't necessarily laugh out loud in response to it. So, yeah. And then there's Krista, who is a laugh machine.
Yep.
That's somebody that you want to hire to be in your audience if you're doing your first improv and you need a little bit of a boost.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if she actually thinks I'm funny or if she just laughs at everyone. with such enthusiasm.
I mean, it could be just both. It could be just both.
Yeah, because sometimes I get her going on an episode where I'm like, okay, we're going to let her recover for a minute. Then we'll get back into this, because she just gets to a point where she can't stop. And I don't think what I'm saying is that funny. But she does. And maybe that's because, as my best friend told me, like, the first time that we actually, like, decided we liked each other was, she's like, when you're angry, you're the funniest person I've ever met. And I'm like, I'm not being funny right now. I'm really pissed off. She's like, but it's hilarious.
But you're so amusing.
Yeah. And I think that, like, when I get upset about stuff when Krista and I are recording about whatever's going on and I go on a little rant, she just finds it hilarious. And then I have to, like, reel her back in because she can't stop laughing.
Yep. I find that to be, oh my God. It's also, sometimes you just can't explain what it was that got you that time.
Yeah.
And I always like that one too, where I will make a joke that I know isn't that good. This happens with Rashawn a lot. Because what Rashawn does is she laughs at the badness of the joke rather than the joke. And yet, it's still the timing of the laugh might fool me for a moment into thinking that it was the joke itself. And I'm like, really? And then she'll, through her laughter, say, that was so bad. And I will realize. And I'm like, oh, okay, good.
She's also, she's good at laughing at things consistently. So
yes.
Either she just gets you really well, or, I don't know, maybe we need to really sit the two of them down and be like, are we funny? Or are you liars?
I can't trust your laughter.
I see you laugh at everyone.
Yep. Anyway, okay, God, this is probably the most off-topic episode we've ever done.
No, we've done worse.
We've had longer tangents, but we've had more of a ratio of actual Doctor Who content to the tangent than I think in this one for sure.
We saved all the tangents for the end. We really did focus on the episode and what we were not happy about.
Yeah, I guess
for
that's
most
it.
Of it.
It was just kind of a rant.
Yeah.
I'm really also interested because, like, you know, you were saying how people wanted to follow through on this. They were curious and thought that there were, you know, some good conversations in store. And I'm really curious about what episodes, like, after the fact, are people worried about? You know what I mean? Like, when we get to this, are they going, oh, this is a bad one, she's going to really hate Clara? Or is this one that they're like, oh, I'm really excited to see what she thinks, and then they listen and they're like, oh.
I don't know how long ago it was. I'll have to scroll back and see if anybody said anything specific about specific episodes so I can sort of be on alert for those.
Okay.
And if not, if it was just moments, then I'll make a new post and ask, like, what are the episodes that you were really looking forward to us talking about, and what are the ones that you were kind of dreading?
Okay.
Because there weren't a lot of people saying, like, oh, I think, you know, it's with this one and this one, like, she's really going to hate it, where there were those episodes previously in previous seasons where people were like, oh, she's going to hate this one or she's going to love this one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But with this, it was more about, like, specific moments that happened that people were like, I really want to see how she reacts to when the Doctor says this, or when he does this, or this scene, or,
mm-hmm.
you know? So I'm wondering if it's full episodes or just pieces.
Well, guys, let us know, because I do want to know about that in general. I mean, that's sort of something that I would like to do along with the, Jamie, what did you think of this episode the first time you saw it?
Okay.
Is Jamie, what do people think about this episode? Do they like it or not?
Well, I can make a post about that, actually. Just be like, these are the episodes we have left.
Mm-hmm.
So please tell me, what did you think of these individual episodes so that I can bring that to the table? Cool.
That would be good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I it'd be really funny if, like, there was one that everybody was super excited about that I hated, and one that everybody agreed was trash that I was like, this was one of the best ones this season. So I am curious about it. Because, like, that has happened before. There's an episode of Cora that we covered that everybody was like, and this is what happened that caused this episode that's coming up to be terrible. And then we got to it and we were like, that was great. What are you talking about? So, you know, it's so subjective. And it's really easy to fall into like, no, it's objective. No, it's not. It really isn't. As much as I also can be that way. I discovered that that's a trait of being an obsessive-compulsive personality disorder this morning, Jamie, when I was obsessively checking Google for symptoms of a panic attack at 4 o'clock in the morning.
What?
Believing that your opinion is, like, correct. And that deviating at all from this opinion or way of doing the thing is not only less efficient, less ideal, but simply wrong. Which is 100% correct for me. That's exactly how I feel. Just why do you not think the right thing? I hurt for you. That kind of feeling.
Oh, well, I guess I don't have OCD then, because I'm very not easily influenced, but my mind can change about something that I maybe thought was great, but giving it, discussion will make me be like, ugh.
See, this is the thing. Mine can too. But that doesn't change the fact that I think that I'm absolutely correct every time my mind changes.
Oh.
Each time. I'm just as sure of it as I was. Even though my opinion's the opposite now. It's just, yeah. And the thing that I read about the difference between OCD and OCPD is that OCD people have intrusive thoughts that they don't want, that make them do things in ritual that they don't want to do, but they can't help themselves.
Okay.
People with OCPD believe their actions are correct, and they have no problem with it. They can see it hurts other people around them, and that bothers them. But otherwise, this is ideal. I'm doing everything the way you should do it. You should be more like me.
Were there other things in this, like, not diagnosis, this
article?
Yeah, like were there other traits in this that applied to you?
Oh God, Jamie, were there? I read the list to Owen, and he just was staring at me. Okay, let me read this to you real quick. Here goes a nice little summary.
This will be fun to end on.
Yeah, guys, mental health. Yikes. That's going to be the next postcard. People with OCPD have the following characteristics. They find it hard to express their feelings. They have difficulty forming and maintaining close relationships with others and have very few close friends. They're hardworking, but their obsession with perfection can make them inefficient. Often, their work comes at the expense of personal relationships and their own self-care. They often feel righteous, indignant, and angry. They often face social isolation. They experience anxiety that often occurs with depression. They have an obsession with lists and planning at the expense of the point of the project.
I'm sorry.
I literally read this list and just started crying. It was like I was seen for the first time in my life. It wasn't even that I was upset. I was just like, oh, thank God somebody understands.
Is there more?
Those are, let's see. Stiff, formal, or rigid mannerisms. That one is not true. Extreme attention to detail. Excessive devotion to work out of proportion to financial need. Hoarding worn or useless items. An inability that I have, and I'm working on it. An inability to share or delegate work because of a fear it won't be done right. A rigid adherence to rules and regulations, an overwhelming need for order, a sense of righteousness about the way things should be done. And then they go on to talk about how it's very difficult to have a relationship with somebody like this because they're just constantly judging you. And that's literally what Owen was saying to me like last week.
Yeah.
He's like, hey babe, I love you, but you really make me feel like a fucking dumbass and I don't appreciate it. And I was like, fair. I can't even like be like, I do? I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm sorry.
The whole, not, like, having to do everything yourself because no one else can do it right. Mm-hmm. We just had that conversation.
Yep. I have that conversation every week, multiple times. Like, that's just, again, this is when how you know that you have, like, a personality disorder like this is reading it and being like, well, yeah. It should be, oh, God. Oh, but you're like, well, yeah, of course I would be the best person for the job. Of course I would do it myself. Why would I give it to somebody else to do? They're not going to. Oh, right. I believe that.
That's how I felt when I read what an introvert actually was. And I was like, oh, this explains so much. I'm not shy. I'm introverted. And like, realizing that made a huge difference.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm like, I'm terrible at small talk. And I always thought that's because I'm shy. Or when I would go to parties and I really needed to have somebody that I went with so that I could stick with them. Mm-hmm. Because it's really hard for me to just like join conversations, even when it's my friends. I thought it was just because I'm awkward. Mm-hmm. But those are traits of being introverted. That stuff is difficult for me. And the first time I read like an actual definition of being introverted with like a list like that, I was like, oh my God. It all makes sense now.
Yep.
It redefined how I looked at myself. Because it's like, it's not that I'm shy and it's not that I'm just not outgoing. It's that those things are actually very difficult for me to achieve. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I get it.
It's a weird moment of just somebody just like fucking, they don't know you, but it feels like they're reading you for filth. Yeah. This was written like years ago, I'm sure. And I'm sitting here like, how dare you?
I found comfort in it. Because I was like, this just makes things make so much more sense. And I don't have to fight against it necessarily. I just have to find ways to work within it. Mm-hmm, make it work for me and not have it hold me back.
One of the biggest things in this that's not actually listed in the bullet point section, but they talk about it later, that I've always had trouble understanding in myself is when I am such an extroverted, gregarious person, except when I'm in like crowds of people that I don't know. When there's a majority of people I don't know. And then it's like impossible to pull me out of my shell. I like completely disappear. And I couldn't understand why that was. And then it's described in this as like, when they are surrounded by people they know, understand, and trust, they feel in control. And so they're free to talk and be themselves. But when they're surrounded by unknown quantities, they feel extremely out of control. And that causes a panic sort of reaction and they withdraw. And I was like, oh, yes, that is what it is. 100%. It was just like, again, putting words to a thing that you've had your whole life, this experience. Yeah. And you haven't got it. And then somebody is just like, well, here's a sentence that completely sums that up. And you're like, oh, I thought I was a real mystery. I guess not.
You are not special.
I am not special. I am not an enigma. I have a personality disorder.
At least it's that personality disorder and not like one of the really bad ones.
Ma'am, that is not the way to talk about that, for fuck's sake. There's somebody like, listening to this with one of the really bad ones going, wow, Jamie, thanks.
Like, what's the one where, I don't think they call it split personality anymore. But that would be rough.
Know. Yeah, that's one of those ones that I'm not sure they think is even real. You know how that's a thing?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh yeah, this was really good for like movies and shit, but it's actually kind of not recognized as like a real disorder.
But I don't know. I've never known anybody who has it, so I guess that it's possible.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I appreciate that I have figured it out, because I have looked at the OCD thing, which felt close to right, but not really. And this explains it. It's not a ritual thing. It's the whole personality problem.
Yeah, this one isn't easy to portray on screen, so you'll probably never see it.
It's portrayed on screen, I think, actually somewhat frequently, but it just comes across that person's an asshole.
Or just very type A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the funniest part of it was getting to the end of it when they were talking about like interpersonal relationships, and they basically described first Brendan, then Owen. They were like, this person often pairs well in relationships with someone who is extremely passive and overly easygoing, or extremely patient and tolerant. And I was like, we had passive first. And I have moved on to extremely patient and tolerant. This is what makes me laugh, because Owen will be like, how are you, like, how do you still have patience with me? And I really have always been like, what do you mean? I am so much. How do you, what? It's always felt like the exact opposite of what he's trying to say, you know? And now I can hold this up and say, see, I was right, which is my favorite thing, which I think is listed here somewhere, the need to always be right. So that's all.
Print it out, affix it to the inside of your planner, and then whenever you have to refer to it, you can be like, let me pull out the list. Point to this one right here. Here we go. That's what's happening right now.
Sorry.
Not my fault. It's just who I am.
All right, lady.
All right.
Are you ready to wrap?
Yeah, I gotta call my mom.
Thank you guys all so much for listening. We love you very much. Everybody send Jamie's mom good energy to get over this virus.
Yes, please.
All of you, please keep wearing your mask.
Yes, please. Even if your state says you don't have to.
Please, thank you. And we will see you next week with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.